Is Russia's intelligence agency on a campaign to cut Finland off from the internet? Just why does Vladimir Putin have such a problem with Finns watching Netflix and chilling? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about one of the stranger stories from this week. Okay, so this is part of actually a story or series of stories that's been building over the course of months. This is a Russian-linked tanker that was seized by Finland that was accused of being at least in the area of a severed undersea cable. And when they boarded the ship, they actually found the tanker called the Eagle S was loaded with spy equipment. But it gets even weirder. You see, they allegedly cut this underwater electricity cable on Christmas Day. But what they found when they boarded the civilian tanker, right, you can see literally there's the Eagle S tanker. So it's totally standard civilian tanker that it was also kitted out with transmitting and receiving devices used to monitor naval activity. Of course, the ship was detained by Finnish Coast Guard members, and it's believed that this was a member of what's sometimes been called the Russian Dark Fleet. These are tankers that are moving Russian oil to and from Russian ports, right? Selling it illegally in violation of U.S. sanctions or U.S.-led sanctions. Really, they're global sanctions at this point. But what's interesting is that it also had a bunch of transmitting and receiving devices that were installed after the fact. It's abnormal for a regular merchant ship to have this kind of equipment, and it was so extensive and so overpowered that it consumed power from the ship's generator, leading to blackouts regularly on the ship. Right, this is according to a source who did maintenance on it as recently as 7 months ago. Now, why you can take a ship in like that in for maintenance, nobody asked questions about the equipment, but I'm sure they had a reasonable sounding explanation, and certainly you wouldn't know a receiver transmitter. It might have just said, hey, listen, the company's trying out some newfangled radio and GPS tracking stuff. It doesn't seem to be working that great. Your maintenance guy goes, no, it doesn't. They go, yeah, these idiots. Okay, cool, right? What's also interesting is flagged in the Cook Islands. And again, it's believed to be one of 2 of 26 aging Russian-linked tankers with what they call opaque ownership structures, right? Including a number of, which includes a number of ship managers known to support Russian maritime trade. Now, this whole thing got started when the Finns started looking into the sabotage of the East Link 2 undersea cable that disrupted the supply of electricity from Estonia to Finland. The tanker allegedly slowed and dragged its anchor across the seabed on December 25th, severing the cable as well as 3 additional cables. So this is pretty weird. But what I think is more strange to me is trying to figure out just what is this a part of, right? And again, according to Germany, they have said, quote, almost every month ships are damaging major undersea cables in the Baltic, according to a German foreign minister. She continued, quote, crews are leaving anchors in the water, dragging them for kilometers along the seafloor for no apparent reason, then losing them when pulling them up. She said, quote, it's more than difficult to still believe in coincidences. This is an urgent wake-up call for us. Now, before we talk about what I think Russia's trying to do, here's one more story in case you weren't convinced. November 18th, the Irish military had to escort Russian spy ships away from undersea cables. This was in mid-November. The Yantar, again, another alleged Russian spy vessel. So this is weird for a whole bunch of reasons. And again, the NATO says we're going to boost our Baltic Sea presence, which again, these ships are not operating clandestinely, right? Like you and I could go into a maritime tracker and find where these ships operate. In fact, it's been pretty public knowledge that Russia's been operating these ships. And so it really begs the question why NATO thinks more of something that isn't effective at stopping this is going to help, right? It's like trying to drink more water to heal your broken bone. It's not really how these things work. But stay hydrated. But before we talk about just why I think Russia's really doing this, I wanted to mention that it's New Year's. And if you want to help the Russians and their North Korean allies ring in this new year with a bang, you can help the Ukrainians by donating to our Combat Vet News fundraiser. Sorry, excuse me, our Combat Veteran Reacts fundraiser. We've partnered with UAO. Many of the units that really, some of them literally risk their lives to get us to their sites in the front lines so that we could visit and interview them. The interviews we're still editing, but I'm still waiting for approval because we talked about some pretty sensitive stuff. But we want to help those guys out today. And that's what this is, right? Helping out folks like the 54th, the 93rd, 25th, Liut Brigade, Rubaza, and the Presidential Brigade. So if you want to help these guys get what they need, including drones, jammers, night vision devices, and energy supply kits, you could do so. And we've got some pretty badass prizes, right? Starting prizes like recognition. If you donate $200, which is about the cost of an FPV drone, they'll hook you up with a patch. And every FPV you donate from there, you get more patches for more units. But really, also, we've got, if you're the first person to make a $5,000 donation, we have an original bottle of champagne, or excuse me, sparkling wine from Bakhmut, the Bakhmut Champagne Factory, which the 93rd went and saved from the rubble. Literally, I met the guy who saved it. He's a really cool dude. And there's only 2 bottles like in existence left. So this is like sort of like owning wine from like a Stalingrad winery, right? Just really a piece of history. So if you're a historic, wine and champagne collector, this is like a once in a lifetime shot to get this thing. So, okay. The link is in the description, of course. Now let's talk about the why. So I looked up this map. Here's a map of all submarine cables, right? Undersea cables. And when we zoom in on those in Finland, you can see on one hand, Finland, right, reaching out into the Arctic Circle, kind of thinly connected, right? And it's a recent NATO member. And you can see that there's a number of cables here that link Finland to kind of the rest of the world, right? Some of these are... some of these are going to be all different kinds of types, right? This is an Ericsson, looks like a internet cable, right? But here's a bunch that go to BCS Phase North 1. Just a lot of these different telecom cables, particularly those that tend to push into, obviously major cities like Helsinki. And this is just strange because Russia's unlikely to cut Finland off. And in some ways, by engaging this campaign of what is effectively harassment, right? It seems like one of these cables were likely the ones severed. Engaging in pretty routine kind of harassment, they're actually making it harder to disrupt Finland's operations, right? Because one of the reasons the U.S. doesn't continually harass its allies for no reason like this, we don't do it because they're allies, our enemies, is because, if you want to save your tricks for when you really need them, right? And so if Russia's goal was to, say, invade Finland, that's when they would want to reveal that, in fact, these civilian ships are actually trained, weaponized spy ships, and suddenly Finland wakes up one day and finds Russian tanks rolling across its border, and it's cut off from Estonia. And so the fact that they're cutting off these cables now, giving Finland a chance to develop a protocol to improve their ability to repair these cables, perhaps even to build resiliency into their system, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's actually making Finland a more robust geopolitical rival for Russia. And so why do it? And honestly, guys, I don't have any answers. The closest I can come is that maybe this is part of a test to test NATO's response and resolve. We've talked about this in other areas, right? There's been a bunch of suspicious fires at weapons warehouses and manufacturing plants in NATO and EU countries that are generally regarded as being perpetrated by Russian intelligence or intelligence-linked criminal groups. There's also been a bunch of propaganda stunts that are also linked to Russian intelligence and propaganda groups. And so, in general, this seems to be a campaign meant to intimidate, meant to send a message to these countries that Russia says, we are big, we are frightening, and we consider ourselves at war with you. So they say, do not think, citizens of Finland, that we are unable to touch you. And so, a few hours of blackouts, right? It's weird, but again, imagine if there was a blackout in your house if you're a US citizen. You might say, wow, that sucks. I wonder if there was too much power being drained or if somebody got into a car wreck and hit a transformer. But then you found out that it was actually done by, say, China or Iran or North Korea, another rival country. It would be very, very disturbing to you because it represents the ability of a hostile country to reach out and touch you and to affect your home. And I think that's the message here. Russia wants to tell Finns, listen, we can reach out and touch you where you live. You aren't immune. And the Russian state is capable of making life hard for the average Finn who goes and supports Ukraine in its war against Russian aggression. Now, again, you may ask yourself, why doesn't this happen in the U.S.? And the answer is one, I think it does. We've talked about this, other instances that I believe are Russian linked. But more importantly, Americans just intimidation tends to backfire on Americans, right? We're just a slightly more, our politics just are a little more aggressive, right? We're pretty mean to each other. So we're really willing to, throw around some weight when it comes to taking out the Russians. And ultimately, the Russians are bullies, right? Finland is small, and they're limited in their ability to strike back against Russia. The U.S. is big, and we have a wide array of toolkits, including what we're doing now, which is arming the Ukrainians to kill lots of Russians. Again, and I'm a perfect example of it, right? A lot of content creators that I know of said that when their channel started getting targeted by Russian hackers, they backed off. They covered less about the conflict, right? Some of them even actually backed away from publicly supporting Ukrainian units like I do in response to Russian threats that their channels received. But when I see troll comments or people try to hack my channel, it just makes me mad. And so I'm happy to, help out these guys. Warms my heart to know that we're helping Ukraine defend itself and send the Russians back home, right? Where they belong. They can run Russia however they want. I wish no ill will towards the average Russian. They just need to focus on Russia, guys. Focus on your own country. Anyway, that's all I had. Huge thank you to James Sterling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Knutson, Bastian Himling, Brian Kelly, Del McCombs, James Allnaw, Henry Roussier, all of our Lieutenant tier members. Couldn't do it without you guys. All right, I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.